of the week.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boy.
This week's game of the week is Redfall, but not for the reason you think it is. I mean, everywhere you looked on the internet this week, everyone was talking about Redfall. Probably not the conversation that Microsoft and Xbox had in mind, but out of all the games that launched this week, I think it's fair to say that Redfall had the majority of the conversation this week, thus making it our game of the week. That's right, games don't have to be good in order for them to be the game of the week. And look, I played Redfall. In fact, I think I'm like 8 or 9 hours into the game, which as far as I can tell, I think I've got like 3 more hours left to play and then I can beat it. And the game isn't terrible. In fact, I enjoyed playing Redfall. Like, as a game, Redfall has a very solid foundation, and it's also a really good gameplay loop. But where Redfall begins to struggle is, like, its polish, and characters being stuck in T-poses, and unresponsive AI enemies, and just a bunch of rendering issues. However, I do have to say, probably my biggest gripe about this game is that instead of blocking out cutscenes and, like, hiring actors, and actually animating the cutscenes, Redfall uses these comic book style stills where voice actors are talking out to advance story, but there's like zero animation and all we see are still images. And let's be clear, there are plenty of other games that have done this, but for a AAA first-party exclusive that Xbox was teeing up to be like the banger of spring, definitely not what I had in mind when I was playing the game. And realistically, I mean, it just doesn't fit the overall feel for the game. Like, when you're playing Redfall, the game definitely feels ambitious and grand in scale. So for the dev team to do these cutscenes, it just feels like they cut corners. And, you know, maybe they were like running out of time around launch and they were like, hey man, we got 4 months left in this dev cycle. What can we cut out? And they're like, well, we can cut out the cutscenes and just have still images, and that'll save us probably about 2 months of dev time. Well, yeah, let's cut it. Let's not have that in the game. And, you know, I don't want this just to be like a negative episode of this podcast, because there were things that I genuinely liked about this game. Like, Redfall takes place in Redfall, Massachusetts, where following a science experiment gone wrong, vampires have begun to take over the city and now are hunting and harvesting on the local population. And the world that Arcane Austin created here is actually really neat. The town is really fun to explore. There are rival factions, roaming vampires, abandoned houses to explore, and of course, every car on the street is pretty much lootable. And there's this really cool moment in the game where, like, the vampires have sucked all the water out of the bay to create, like, this impenetrable water wall. So in its place is like all of these chasms and craggy cliffs and caves, you know, abandoned boats and dead fish where the water used to be. And you get to explore that. And, you know, again, kind of a small little detail, but it was one of those that I was like, man, this is a really cool way to expand the story. And I thoroughly enjoyed this part of the game. And that's something that Redfall does really well. They make the game feel very lived in. I mean, granted, occasionally you'll run across like a frozen vampire or like a dead body that's just in T-pose, but as you progress throughout the map in the game, it just feels like there's danger around every corner, and I really liked that. Like, it encouraged me to continue playing because I'm like, oh, I wonder what's around this alley or what's down this street. Oh, let me snipe this guy down the street. I found myself getting lost in the world of Redfall, and I loved it. Now, when you start Redfall, there are 4 characters you have to choose from. Lila has these telekinetic abilities. Devender is like an inventor. Remy De La Rosa is like this military chick who has robots. And Jacob is a paramilitary sharpshooter. And I spent the majority of my time playing this game as Jacob, and I really enjoyed his abilities. Jacob's main feature is like this raven that can scan the battlefield ahead and alert you to the enemies. He also has this ability that allows you to cloak yourself throughout the battle, but like rarely used that because the enemies weren't that difficult to kill when I was playing it. And then Jacob has like this ultimate, which I don't even know if we're calling him ultimate, but it felt like very Overwatchy ultimate-y. And that's to summon this like OP ghost rifle that will literally one-shot your enemies. And this is probably a good transition to talk about the actual weapons in the game as well. Redfall as a game has pistols, SMGs, shotguns, assault rifles, snipers, flare guns, UV light guns, and stake launchers, which, stake launchers, That was the gun that when I played the game, I was like, I'm not going to use this thing. And then, like, I actually used it for the first time. And holy shit, changes the game completely. Stake launchers are literally one shot, one kill on vampires. And not even like the entry-level vampires. When you're fighting the bosses, three stakes and they're dead. I'm not even kidding. Try it out. And then when you get to like the big baddie Hollow Man fight, spoiler alert, you can use your stake launcher and 12 shots from the stake launcher kill this thing. Not even kidding. 12 shots from the stake launchers kill the Hollow Man. Extremely OP. Arcane, if you're watching, I hope you never fix that because I genuinely got a thrill out of like one-shotting vampires in this game and it made me laugh so hard. But that being said, now that we've mentioned that, I should point out, I was playing on the easiest mode possible. Redfall has 3 difficulties, Daylight, Dusk, and Midnight. And from playing on Daylight, let me tell you, man, that is like stupid easy. Like, I legit think you could play a Daylight run of Redfall and not use any of the weapons, just like melee your enemy. Like, obviously, you're gonna have to like stake the vampires, but like just punching your enemies on a Daylight run is probably very doable. And the weapons in this game feel really good. Like, for a first-person shooter, I was very worried because some games do it really well, and then other games are Far Cry. But this game really made the guns feel genuinely good. And you know, early on I read that Arcane Austin had teamed up with like id Software, who are the makers of Doom. And that definitely shows because this game, the run and gun gameplay reminded me a lot of Doom. And it was one of the highlights of this game. Like, I genuinely loved the gunplay. So big W to the team there. And I also wanted to point out, like, I made a note when I was playing the game. This game, Redfall, it feels so much like an Arcane Austin game. If you've never played any of their games before, you're not going to understand this, but Arcane also made a game called Dishonored, and the characters in this game look so much like the characters from Dishonored, but the gameplay is completely opposite of a Dishonored game. Like, the gameplay reminds me of, like, Doom meets Borderlands. And I know that sounds weird, but like the mission styles, the enemy confrontations, map layout, that all feels very Borderlands, while the graphics are just very Dishonored. And it's such a weird concoction, but it definitely works. Like, I went into this game thinking like, oh my god, like, what are we gonna play here? You know, another 6, another 4 out of 10, or 60%, like, I'm wasting my time here. But after playing this game for like 8 hours, Redfall reminds me of like every other game as a service. The game's launched with a solid foundation, but like the substance isn't there, and there's a bunch of bugs and glitches, but the dev team will like eventually continue to support the game, and the player base will grow, and the game will thrive. Like think about that. You got Fallout 76, you got Sea of Thieves, you got Grounded, and No Man's Sky. And those styles of game give me hope for, you know, the future of Redfall. And that's why this game is being destroyed in the reviews, is because Xbox, Bethesda, they didn't package it properly. Like, this game should have launched in early access, and it would have changed everything. But the expectation that Xbox built around Redfall was like, this is the next big thing. It's just unfortunate because this is just more of the same stuff that Xbox has brought to the market with games like Sea of Thieves and Grounded. And after playing it, I mean, I will stand behind my opinion that, you know, Redfall is a solid game that definitely would have benefited from like a early access release. Granted, I also understand from the developer perspective, like, you only get one first impression. So, you know, if you're unwilling to release early access because you're worried about what people might say and they'll never come to the game again, you know, change your timeline. Again, Redfall, delay the game by a year or a year and a half, and you probably could have solved all the issues and maybe not released a game with like animated stills. Because the reality is, no one likes half-baked games, right? You release a game and you say, hey, it's ready for the public, and then we get it and it's just like a fart in a church, and it's just like, who wants this? Nobody wants this. Nobody enjoys a fart in a church. It's just unnecessary outrage. And again, like, I can't echo this enough. It's a fun game. I genuinely enjoyed my time playing Redfall, and I'm going to continue playing the game. However, when your community is expecting this game to be a knockout AAA experience, having major issues, bugs, glitches, and cutscenes being still images that completely remove your audience from the moment, it is a big issue in my opinion. And I saw a tweet this week that I think kind of sums up like this whole Redfall situation perfectly. And it said something like, Bethesda learned this week what it was like to launch a first-party game for the first time, and dealing with the expectations around that. Whereas Xbox learned that they can't trust and be hands-off with Bethesda in the future if they don't want to get this type of backlash. And that is leading us to maybe the most interesting story arc about Redfall. Like, it has nothing to do with Redfall. It's like, what does Xbox and Bethesda do with Starfield? Like, there is already an ungodly amount of pressure around Starfield. And how does the reception of Redfall impact that? Like, I've got to believe that there are internal conversations at Xbox and Bethesda saying, like, is Starfield ready? Like, should we delay this game? And as a fan of the first Hellblade, let me tell you something. Phil Spencer, Hellblade 2 better be an absolute banger. And I will vouch for the entire gaming community. Get Hellblade 2 right, please. Like, if you need to delay it by another 24 months, go ahead. I'll give you 2 years. I can wait 2 more years for Hellblade 2. Just make it the game of the freaking decade, please. But anyway, try out Redfall. I know the reviews might scare you, but like, if you subscribe to Game Pass, it's $15 a month or something like that. Definitely check it out. It's worth checking out. I had a fun time. I played it solo. I didn't play it multiplayer. I'm interested to see like how the experience evolves with multiplayer, but I had a good time. But yeah, kudos to the team at Arcane Austin. You launched a game. Hopefully you'll stand behind it in the next couple months, update it, take care of all the bugs and glitches, and interested to see like how you expand Redfall. One thought I had while playing this game was like, this would be sick in New Orleans. So Redfall 2, coming to you from New Orleans. But anyway, as always, I'm genuinely interested in hearing your thoughts about this game. If you played it as well this week, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're listening on Spotify, come on over to our YouTube channel. Head on over, come on down, and drop your comments in the YouTube channel. And while you're over there, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And big week next week. Yeah, massive week for gamers. Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, also known as Breath of the Wild 2. DBA, Breath of the Wild 2. My God, you want to talk about a game that has ungodly pressure. Starfield's up there. But if Breath of the Wild 2, if Tears of the Kingdom launches with a mere hiccup, or a bug, or a glitch, or God forbid it deals with what Pokemon's dealing with, I pray for the internet gaming community because I don't think they can handle it.